We're Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts. What makes us food shipping experts? Glad you asked. First, we've built a well-connected, highly reliable food-grade carrier network that significantly improves OTIF compliance, streamlines delivery management, and complies with food-grade requirements like trailer washouts and seal processes. We know what food shippers really need, a dedicated account team to offer critical after-hours support. Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts.
Welcome to Running on Ice, the coolest community in freight. I'm your host, Mary O'Connell, bringing you the latest tech updates and warehouse news and everything happening in the cold chain world. Not only is there the coolest show in freight, but there's also Running on Ice, a newsletter that could not be colder. You can subscribe to that on freightwaves.com/runningonIce. Today, we welcome George Shergan, Chief Client Officer at Dynamic Logistics. Welcome to the show, George.
Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to get in today. This is something that I feel I love having this episode every year. Last year we did it a little differently. This year we're doing it a little different. And that is kind of getting into the meat and the fun that is produce season. It used to destroy my life every year in agriculture, as I was always on the spring planting side of things. But it's always a fun time, and it's something that's incredibly relevant as it does, have a pretty substantial effect on the market. But before we get too far into that, let's get some background on you and how you got started at Dynamic Logistics.
Well, sure. Yeah. Again, George Shergan, Chief Client Officer. I've been at DLX since 2021, but I started in the logistics business and world I've been in it since 2006. So in the 3PL space, most of my career, a lot on the client side and carrier side. So got my feet wet in both areas and really helping support clients from that continuous improvement aspect of their business, right? So yes, the freight market is very cyclical. Everything comes back around, whether it's the produce season or capacity in general or what's going on from a rate perspective. But you always have to stay on top of things as a client health director and leader within an organization to making sure we're always looking to improve our services and offer new things to clients that will help them continue to evolve. That's our real main goal here at DLX. And so when I reached out to the CEO back in 2000, and it was really around COVID time, 2020, maybe even a little bit earlier, I was looking to get my feet wet within an organization, and they were trying to build up a client health team. What can they do outside of just, the execution of loads, booking trucks from point A to point B and kind of going through the motions. They really wanted to dig a little bit deeper on how they could get involved with their clients and evolve that solution that they offer to them. So, I was talking to him and kind of things just worked out from the perfect timing of where I was currently to where I could get over to work with DLX kind of from that 2020 to 2021 timeframe. It just worked out. And so came over and really put some focus, started as a director and then kind of moved my way up to the chief client officer that I sit at today. And so my team is managing the analytical portion of our clients' health, right? And the continuous improvement from a truckload or LTL perspective, as well as we have a director of client health that's really digging into each one of our clients and evolving that solution and as well as claims management. So a lot of different features that I help manage, but our ultimate goal here within my team is to really continue to evolve, right? So the topic we're talking about today of what's new in kind of the market related to related to what we're doing today from the produce perspective. We have to be out in front of that as an organization to really find opportunities for our clients so that we're not getting hit with capacity when it's getting really tight, right? Working with our core carriers to evolve a solution so that they are going to be there when we need them and not necessarily go to the next carrier or next customer that's going to pay them a little bit more. So we get out in front of it, and I'm excited to kind of talk about some of that stuff today with you.
First of all, I think that you guys might be one of the few people I've ever talked to that has like a legitimate client health and like basically someone or a whole team whose entire job it is to focus on your clients, make sure that their needs are met instead of just like also tacking that onto an account manager's responsibility. And I kind of almost wonder like what made you guys say like this is where we want to spend our time and effort versus like just having account managers handle this?
But we still have, obviously, the day-to-day account manager. We want them focused on the execution of the day-to-day from a load perspective. So we have a team that's supporting those clients and really an extension of those clients from an execution standpoint. So it's really important for us to separate those two departments to where we have someone that's looking into the business, not working on the business, right? So that team is my team, really trying to dig a little bit deeper, understanding their data by using KPIs and metrics that are beyond what we look at today. We use Microsoft BI as an organization. So our team is spending a lot of time with those clients, looking at their data, looking at their insights, and trying to evolve what we can do potentially next, right? Whether it's consolidations, mode shifts, LTL to parcel, parcel to LTL. We're really trying to evolve what we can look at and not necessarily do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? What the old saying, right? So we're trying to really evolve that, and it's very important for us to stay in front of our clients from that perspective and give them what's new in the market. We're really trying to obviously, as well as a tech standpoint, what new technologies out there, right? From a tracking standpoint, or from even automating appointment scheduling, right? Or doc schedulers, or whatever it might be. We're trying to evolve what we can do for clients that's a little bit beyond what we're doing right now. And so when we sign an extension in the next 3 years, we're going to stay with that client from the long term.
I really like that approach because I think that that's for sure, in my opinion, a missed opportunity in a lot of organizations to have that proactive approach versus that reactionary, because I feel like that, especially when it comes to like your client relationships, a lot of times it can be reactionary. And I like that you guys have chosen the opposite of that, of kind of planning ahead and saying like, hey, the people who work on the day-to-day operations of this, they don't need to necessarily be long range planning for how to improve improve this customer's organization. I like that approach that you guys have. So that being said, we are coming up on May. The good old adage: April showers bring May flowers. And I am excited because that marks the May means Memorial Day. Memorial Day is the unofficial or the unofficial start of summer. I know that the official start of summer is like in June somewhere, but that gives us the 100 days of summer. It's peak produce shipping season. It's literally the best time of the year where you hurry up and wait until someone says, okay, we're harvesting today. And then it's go, go, go. But you need to have all those trucks just sitting around, hurry up and waiting. But obviously, you can't put them there too early because then you're just having trucks sit there, do nothing. So, what do you think, kind of from that like 3,000-mile view? What is 2025 produce shipping going to be like this year?
Yeah, it's again kind of going back to what we talked about before we jumped on here. Is there's a lot of still unknowns. I can tell you that I don't think, from what I've seen right now, a lot of changes that could potentially impact what we do day to day from a produce perspective. I think the things that will continue to happen historically will potentially happen, but based on what's going on with tariffs, what's going to happen from a capacity standpoint. Those are the things that could potentially impact a customer's network of carriers, right? Ultimately, where it's driving those carriers out of their network that they previously had based on factors that they could not control, right? So there's not enough volume or freight in the market today. We've got carriers that potentially could be dropping out of the market space. I just read an article this morning, a carrier that's been in the business for 40 plus years out of Florida just went under, right? And 160 trucks that are going to leave that market from the Florida, the Georgia, to the Alabama and the South Carolina market. So those are the impacts that potentially could have, really a stronghold on what's going on in the produce season. But ultimately, as of right now, I'm not seeing anything that's going to disrupt it. What we try to do as an organization is get out in front of it, like we kind of spoke about just a second ago, is working with our core carriers. So we have a carrier network here, and each one of our clients either has one, we use the spot or the spot market, or we have contracted markets where we use carriers that are repetitive, and we put them on lanes where we know, one, we're going to secure that capacity, and two, we're paying them a fair price, ultimately that they're going to stay loyal to that customer and be there when we need them based on whatever's happening in the marketplace. So we try to get out in front of some of those things, working with our clients and being a little bit prepared beyond what's the expectation? I don't know. Let's just hope and let's just gamble, right? We're not trying to gamble. We're trying to stay a little bit ahead of the curve by building those relationships as much as we do with our clients on the carrier side. So again, the whole team is dedicated to ensuring that it's there when we need it. Ultimately, that we have the right carriers in the right space and the right lanes so that our customers will be successful in that heavy season of the produce. So again, we have a lot of food shippers at DLX. And so refrigerated freight is one of our primary modes of transportation. I'd say it's about 70% of our business. And so we're making sure we have a robust carrier network that's going to be there when we need them.
I like that plan for the worst, hope for the best situation of that's on one of the other shows I work on is Check Call, and that's 3PLs and freight brokers. And I'm like, this is
Right.
the time to make those phone calls and say, hey, I'm sure who you're working with now is great and wonderful, but if it doesn't work out, I'm around. And so I like that you guys as those first choices of saying, "Hey, don't worry, shipper. We've got your food. We've got your produce. Don't worry. We're here for you." You also have those people that you're like, if plan A fails, "Hey, buddy, you want to see about making some money today?"
Right. Yep. 100%.
But I feel like also like from your shipper's perspective, they have to love that like no matter what, like they don't know that maybe carrier A, B, or C fell through. You just know that, oh, they got the truck there and my stuff's fine.
Yep.
But they don't necessarily need to know that you were making a couple phone calls because somebody fell off, or maybe a carrier that you were planning on using filed for bankruptcy, or you never know what can happen out
You
there in
know.
carrier land.
Yep. That's 100% correct. So the more we can be prepared for that, obviously the better off, we're going to be from capacity standpoint as well as our customers from the execution standpoint. There is so many in the grocery market, there's so many fines and things that come with late deliveries and not scheduling appointments that we've got to make sure we're trying to avoid that at all costs for our clients, and be proactive in that approach. And so that's why we take pride in our carrier relationships as much as we do our customers. Just based on the fact that we don't have assets, and we know that we don't have assets, and our eyes and ears on the road are our carriers. And so we have to make sure we're staying with them and being loyal to them when we can in those areas and giving them the freight that's going to work for them in their network. At the end of the day, service is key, and customers will want the best and cheapest rate a lot of times, but they ultimately know that they need to make sure that their product's getting delivered on time, because that can impact their overall supply chain more than it can just by saving a dollar here or there, right? So it's very important for us to making sure that we have the right carriers from a service perspective as well.
That's always one of my favorite things that I loved, kind of educating my shippers on is like, I can get you the cheapest possible
100%.
freight.
Yeah.
I can get it, but I cannot guarantee that your claims or your damages or your losses aren't also going to increase. So if you
That's right.
want rock bottom prices, baby, say less. I get it, but I can't
Yep.
guarantee that your stuff's going to get there.
Right. 100%.
So when it comes to, so you mentioned that you don't see many disruptions coming to the produce market this year, which we love to see. But when it comes to looking at 2025 volumes compared to 2024 volumes, are we expecting to see more, less, the same? Is there some consistency, or is it going to just kind of be like a market by market type thing?
I think it'll be a little bit of all three, to be honest with that. But I do think that it's going to be a case by case scenario for customers and those that are shipping that product. Ultimately, people need to eat, and the food in the market space is typically going to stay pretty strong no matter what happens. We saw that during the COVID times, right? So we still saw food need to be shipped, product need to be shipped, versus the commodities that are the needs are the wants, not the needs, right? So the needs is the food and getting it out in the marketplace. I can tell you from our customer standpoint, we've seen our customers shipping a little bit more this year versus what we saw in 2024 at this same time frame. Nothing super significant different, but I can tell you it is up from what we're seeing and what we're predicting from some of our clients, anywhere from 3 to 4%. So it's very important for us to making sure that we have those carriers like we talked about earlier, because consistency is going to be key, and making sure we're aggressive in that marketplace with those customers as well as those carriers, because you never know what could happen. Like I said, the market could flip tomorrow based on a hurricane that hits in that area, right? Or who God knows what could happen from an earthquake. But there's so many things that could have an impact, even from a fuel perspective, that really disrupt the marketplace, that are hard for anybody to predict. And I think if people could predict that, there'd be a lot less people in the freight world, and we'd have a lot of people that are focusing on one or two people that know everything. So it's just so many unpredictable things that we need to be prepared for. And the more you can get out in front of it with your clients and building those relationships with those clients and understanding what their expectations are, what their volumes and their forecasts look like, and being a true partner to them are what make us successful and where we sit today, versus just an execution tool and platform for those clients. We really want to make sure that we're partnered with them and we work with them on whatever's going on from planning perspectives, or new maybe a promotional plan that they're shipping out in a month or two. We try to get out in front of that with them, and being really close to them so there's no surprises.
It's that you guys really take that partnership part of it seriously. Like, this is something I've said a lot of, if you are looking at whether it's technology vendors, TMS provide, like for any vendor that you're working with, you need to make sure that they have your back and are as invested as your business as you are, because you don't want someone, like you said, you don't want someone that's just going to take your freight on a transactional thing and say, okay, thank you, here you go, but not plan for the future, not plan, hey, we see that we're having a lot of demand down here. Is there a way we can space it out? Is there a reason everything has to go at one time? Just kind of being, I don't want to say that consultant, but just kind of that voice of like, just checking in. Is this, are we sure about this? But because here's
Yep.
some other ways we can do it. And you kind of come with that education approach.
Yeah, we definitely work with, we use sonar data a lot, right? And we invest in a lot of that technology to get out in front of what potentially could come down in the market, right? From prediction standpoint or volume standpoint. We're big on sending market updates to our clients, whether it's monthly or weekly or biweekly. We try to get out in front of it. So a lot of things they have internally that maybe we're not aware of. So if they know something's happening in the market, by utilizing those tools and those resources, they lean on us a little bit more than maybe some of the other 3PLs in the marketplace, because we become the experts, right? We become the experts in that field by not just saying we know, but utilizing data and research that shows the facts behind some of the things that are potentially coming in the marketplace. So it's very important for us to invest in those types of technology from a 3PL perspective, whether it's using sonar or other market insight data site that we like to use to really drive efficiencies within what we're looking at, so that ultimately our customer can take advantage of that, of what's going to come down the pipe.
Exactly. It's like the I think it was Schoolhouse Rock that said knowledge is power. You guys are just rocking with all the knowledge that you can acquire, which is, not a problem, not a bad problem to have.
The more the merrier. That's what I say. Yeah.
So, with all of these planning for the future and planning for the unknowns, but then you're also seeing a slight increase in volume of your shippers,
Yep.
nothing like, earth shattering, but you are seeing that. So, there is some contingencies you have to kick into gear. Have you seen more? What kind of impact has it had on spot rates or even driver availability? Have you seen outbound tender lead times have to rise, or has it really remained pretty constant? Because like you said, the volumes haven't been that impactful.
I don't think it's necessarily we've seen a huge impact from the rates on the spot or even contracted side of our reefer. In fact, we've seen it to continue to stay very strong in that marketplace. Again, working with our core carriers, and really we use it to the market to really challenge and leverage their spend and their costs against what our clients are paying, right? To kind of negotiate back and forth with them to really try to drive to where the market is, not necessarily outside of the market. But I don't see, and I haven't seen a lot of impact to the rates as it sits today in the spot market. Capacity is definitely tighter than it was this time last year, but I think a lot of carriers were planning for a little bit more this year, this time this year than what we're seeing. Right, a lot of carriers had put some hefty plans in place, because I think 2024 was a down year for a lot of carriers. We saw it in the marketplace. We saw it from a cost perspective. I don't think they've seen a lot of that come to fruition this first quarter for sure. And they're still very aggressive in their price. They're still really trying to find those lanes that work for them in their network, and you'll see it reflect in the pricing that we see from those carriers. But again, going back to what we talked about, our goal is not necessarily to drive the lowest cost carrier into their solution. We try to work with our carriers and provide a competitive price. That's where the market needs to be. Ultimately, making sure that that carrier will stay loyal when we need them to be loyal, because the market will flip. The market does come back, goes back, goes down. Right? It's continual. So we want to make sure we're staying in front of that with our carriers. But again, not a huge impact that we've seen as of to date. But those things can change. We want to make sure, as we see, again, those carriers that might be going out of the market that I'm not even aware of, right? Because of something that's happening, that they're down based off of the last 3 years, and nobody knew that they were down as well. So we have to just make sure we're working with those carriers so we stay consistent in those volumes.
That is something that I have been trying to scream from the rooftops as much as possible. Is, just because we had kind of the dregs of that freight recession last year, and
Yep.
everyone was expecting a big swing this year. And there's been a swing, but not really the expectation that everybody had. But we saw in 2020 with carriers charging shippers like ridiculous rates during the pandemic. And then kind of as it turned, shippers were really gung ho to be like, oh, well, we're going to charge carriers this exorbitant rate now. And so something that I have said is like, carriers are like, sometimes when they've been running the past few years, they haven't necessarily been profitable. They've taken the loads to keep their trucks running. And that's something that I've been trying to kind of shout into the ether is, you do have to take care of that carrier and that shipper partnership and that relationship, because when it swings back, you don't want your carriers turning around and trying to
Right.
gouge your shippers or ask for like double digit 20% rate increases. It's really it's a very delicate balance that you're sitting there going, okay, I know that you think you can get a better deal, but you need to take care of this person because this person always comes and bails you out. Whereas the cheapest option down the street is not going to be there for you.
Yeah. And I think you hit it on the head when it comes to even claims, right? Because in the reefer and freight market, there's a lot of temperature issues that come with a lot of that stuff, right? And so working with those carriers that, they understand that a lot of times these shippers will ship products to some certain grocery warehouses or stores that they don't want the whole load based off of a malfunction, based off of a reefer download. And working with some of those carriers that understand that and work with us and work with our shipper to where that loss doesn't necessarily fall on our customer, right? And so that's really huge in our market space, because a lot of times there'll be people who just say, well, it's not my fault. What can I do? Right. We want to make sure that our customers know that we have their back in those situations, but also that the carrier knows that we'll fight for them on facts where we see that their temperatures had maintained temperature and they'd never, they have executed where we needed them to execute. And so we rely on scorecards and making sure that if that carrier is not performing like they need to, there is something we put in an action plan in place. So we sit down with those carriers and even bring customers into those conversations, right? If we need to, and we really evaluate the overall service that they're performing for our clients. Not just they had a failure last week, but overall they're operating at a 96% on time, right? So it's doing a really good job at finding those efficiencies, maybe those areas where we can work on with that particular carrier and the shipper, maybe shifting a lane here or there, right? Making sure that their service is going to stay where it needs to be so that it's a win-win for both the carrier and the client. I think that's the sweet spot, right? Is just that win-win for both parties. Ultimately, that the carrier is getting the freight that they want and they know they're going to do a good job for you, and the customer's not paying over what the market's driving, right? We want to make sure we stay market competitive and they know that they're getting the service that they need.
Also, I cannot applaud you enough for the first words out of your mouth when something goes wrong is, oh, it's the driver's fault. Cannot applaud that enough, because it's not, sometimes it is, but not every time. And
Not every
there
time.
are
Yep.
so many instances where that's the first, oh, well, it's driver's fault. No, take 5 seconds, make some phone calls, see what actually happened, and stop just blaming your driver right off the bat.
Yep. Yep. And I think our customers know that, and our customers appreciate that approach.
So that being said, we're looking to the future. We're in the middle of 2025 produce
Yeah.
season. What kind of trends do you see emerging from the 25 season that, might be kind of an impact moving forward in the cold chain itself?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably not a lot of new things, but what we're seeing more and more is obviously online tracking or reefer temperature gauges, whether it's using different trackers to put in loads so your temperatures are being recorded using that chain or that tracking device. We've seen that grow significantly over the last, year and a half. Really, a lot of customers demanding it. Even Kroger coming out with their demand on they need to have everything being tracked online, or even the temperature readings that are going to be updated every 15 minutes into their one network system. So those are the things that are going to continue to grow, I think, as you see technology gets smarter and smarter, or right more advanced as we emerge into 2025 and into 2026. That I think that we need to make sure that we're on board, right? We're consistently looking at new technology, like I talked about earlier, from even automating our appointment scheduling, right? Not necessarily utilizing a human to do that, but how can we use AI to be getting those first appointments, right, outside of what other shippers are trying to do, right? So that our customers getting the best time, our carrier is getting the best time, and it's working for our client and the carrier at the same sentence. So we've invested a lot of that stuff, and I think you're going to continue to see some of those things grow as we move into 2025. And you're going to have a solution for your customers that will show them those realign tracking, right? Or let me see that truck going down the road. Let me see that temperature going down the road, because they have to understand that for when they're getting fined, right? And we have the material and the data to go back and give to them so that they can fight, those fines and really work with their own customers to help mitigate some of the cost that they see outside of what freight costs are, right? Because those small costs are definitely going to impact and have impact shippers for years. And some of this technology is really helping us evolve that solution for our clients so that we can be out in front of it.
I think that the technology investments, specifically in appointment scheduling alone, are going to amount to success in any way you spend it. Instead of sitting there having a dispatcher or a broker like going through, okay, this customer and this carrier pairing means they like this appointment time. Because that's a lot to hold in your head or on a piece of paper. And if you just have those preferences set, then that AI is going to know the second those appointments come available, this is mine, this is who it's going to, because they already have these preferences. Because there's a lot of carriers that they're like, oh, I'm picking up at shipper A. Well, I want to be there at 8 o'clock in the morning. Or, oh, it's this guy. Well, I want to be there at 1 p.m. Like I want to kind of end my day there, so that, because I know it's going to take me forever to get loaded. And I think that is honestly one of the easiest and best use cases for kind of getting AI in the door, just to see what it can do to help the business. Because honestly, who has time to sit there and call and make appointments?
Yeah, for sure. That's the busy work, right? We
Yeah.
want to make sure we're being more proactive in some of the other things for our clients. That tracking, we're never going to lose that customer service perspective that,
Yeah.
some organizations can, right? We're not necessarily ever going to walk away and say we're only using AI for certain capabilities or certain functions, because there's something to be said with human interaction and being involved with your shipments and working with the clients. So let's be honest, fraud's not going away,
Yeah.
right? Fraud is huge in the marketplace. We're seeing it every day. And so some of these tools are helping us be, from a stance being smarter and working with our different carriers and our shippers. So we know where that freight's at all time, because that's not going away anytime soon. We have to be very proactive in that approach as well. So it's very, very important to have the technology, utilizing the customer service and utilizing your core carriers that, are loyal and they're going to move your freight and get it there on time.
1,000%. And that's where I'm curious to see kind of how the future goes, is how we balance that human component and that relationship
Yeah.
nature that is logistics, with kind of the technological innovation that we know is there. But that relationship aspect is probably never going to go away, at least in our lifetime.
Yep. Yep. I agree.
So that brings us to the best question of the day,
Yeah.
or possibly the hardest, depending on how you look at it. George, is cereal considered a soup?
So I should have done a little bit more research here,
Okay.
right? So in my mind, I need to get the definition of what soup is, but my mind, soup has got to be hot.
Okay.
And so I would say it is not a soup. I would say it's more of just I don't know. To me, it's almost like a dessert, right? Because it's so sweet. I know it's not, but I would say it is not a soup because it is not warm, in my opinion.
I like it. I like it. I also don't eat my cereal with milk, so it's already not
There you
it's
go.
already not a soup to me.
Yeah.
But I like it. You have a solid reason for it, and
Yep.
you shall not be swayed, probably.
Yeah. We'll see. Someone could convince me otherwise, but
All right, George, if anyone maybe has the better cereal as a soup debate, or if they kind of are stuck in the produce season and they're just like, we don't know what to do or where to start,
yep.
where can they find you outside the show?
Yeah, you can visit our website, dynamiclogistics.com. We can reach out. There's easy ways to find us, or you could even email me directly, right? My email is my first initial, G, last name Shergan, at shipdlx.com, right? I'm on LinkedIn as well. You can look me up, George Shergan. So, there's lots of ways to find me, or reach out to DLX. We're here to help. And if anything, just be an advisor, right? We don't necessarily we're not trying to sell you on something new or come work with us. We want to make sure that if there's people in the marketplace that need help, how can we help you? That's our ultimate goal.
I like that. You are you're kind of like the produce season 101 kings, if you will.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You can catch other episodes of Running on Ice right here on YouTube or anywhere else you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcast and Spotify. Need more Running on Ice news? No sweat. Subscribe to the newsletter on freightwaves.com/running on ice. See you on the internet.
We're Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts. What makes us food shipping experts? Glad you asked. First, we've built a well-connected, highly reliable food-grade carrier network that significantly improves OTIF compliance, streamlines delivery management, and complies with food-grade requirements like trailer washouts and seal processes. We know what food shippers really need, a dedicated account team to offer critical after-hours support. Dynamic Logistics, the food shipping experts.